Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would do this short little video, at least more than likely short overall compared to my usual standards. And I thought that I would review this video by that of Dante's Boxing Nation, where they end up giving an interview, a short little interview, to that of Caleb Plant overall about both Canelo Alvarez and David Benavidez, and he compares the two of the fighters. And before I really get into this video, a lot of people always ask me, or certain people always ask me, they say, why do you bother over reviewing some of these videos? Why do you review that of Dante's Boxing Nation? Why do you review that of Aki TV or Boxing Eagle or some of these other guys? I can't stand them because they have a lot of racist or racial narratives overall when it comes down to it. Why do you give these guys the time of day? Well, the main answer overall for that, and those are not the only types of responses that I've gotten. Some other people have also said, are you clout chasing these guys overall? Why do you keep mentioning their name? Well, a big part of the reason, once again, why I review a certain amount of YouTube channels, and these are not the only YouTube channels that I overall like to review, but I like to review theirs a lot of the time specifically because, once again, a lot of their points, or some of their points, I'll say, I won't say a lot of their points, but some of their points overall, they sound overall like somewhat of good points, or they sound somewhat realistic. And to the average viewer overall, especially one that does not pay attention that much overall to boxing and doesn't do overall their research or doesn't overall know the context of the certain situation, you may watch one of their videos and you may take a look at it and say, yeah, you know what? There are certain fighters or there are certain athletes out there that do have the complexion for the protection. And they overall get more protection in the media overall than what certain black American athletes can do. And there are certain double standards against that of black American athletes. And I agree overall with some of those points that Dante and some of these other channels bring up. But in my opinion, like usual, a lot of the times with Dante's Boxing Nation and some of these other guys, they take it way, way, way too far to the point overall to where they try to degrade certain fighters overall that they don't want to be ranked on the top pound per pound list or at least at the number one spot. And that's why every time Lomachenko or Canelo Alvarez or Usyk or now Mr. Naoya Inoue, every time one of those fighters is ranked as the number one pound for pound fighter, Dante has to try to make it seem like that fighter is more smoke and mirrors and more fluff and muff than what they actually are of substance, than of reality. And that's why he goes after certain fighters like that of a Canelo Alvarez and says, oh, this dude is a bum. This guy overall is just a weak European white boy. But now all of a sudden, that Caleb Plant is about to fight David Benavidez. All of a sudden, he is claiming that Caleb Plant he believes will expose David Benavidez. And I think that Dante overall is still going with David Benavidez to win the fight. But all of a sudden, this guy that allegedly was this pushover for Canelo Alvarez, just this weak European white boy, apparently Caleb Plant is apparently going to expose that of David Benavidez. You know, the same David Benavidez that apparently is going to run right through Canelo Alvarez. This is why I always say a lot of the times that I don't believe that Dante truly believes in a lot of the shit that he says. Now, according to Dante, overall, to be fair to his somewhat of consistency when it comes down to it, if you want to call it that, he did, in his opinion, say that Caleb Plant was completely outboxing Canelo Alvarez. Him and Billy Joe Saunders were, and Canelo was losing the fight before he ended up getting the knockout. Now, for those of us that actually know how to score a boxing fight competently, we know that that wasn't the case. But overall, that's what Dante would have you believe. But it is what it is. Anyways, Caleb Plant, all in all, is going to talk about both Canelo Alvarez and David Benavidez. Of course, we all know that Caleb Plant, that he has an up-and-coming fight against that of David Benavidez in a couple of weeks, I believe on March 25th, a fight that I am very much looking forward to, a fight all in all that I believe is a very decently competitive fight, and I'm not going to do my full breakdown probably until about either next week or the week of the fight. I will do my breakdown. There's been a couple of people that have asked me to put my full-on breakdown or analysis out there. I'm not going to do that until a little bit later, but we'll see overall what ends up happening with that. Anyways, Caleb Plant's going to talk about both Mr. Canelo Alvarez and David Benavidez. Let's get straight into it.
So Caleb,
Yo, yo.
man, do you like being the underdog? And what's the most underrated thing about Caleb Plant heading into this fight? Is it punching power, or what do you think about all that, Caleb?
Yeah, I like taking on the title as the underdog. You know, I feel like that's something that I've been throughout not just my career, but my life. And, showing the world that just because you may come from a certain place or or look a certain way, that doesn't mean that you can't go out and accomplish, big things, great things. And so I enjoy having that title above my name. And then, March 25th, the most underrated thing. I don't know. You have to tune in March 25th. We'll get to find out.
Well, this is what I'm going to say for you, Mr. Caleb Plant. And I like Caleb Plant as a fighter. I believe that he is an A-grade fighter. Now, is he still that level of A-grade fighter after Canelo Alvarez knocked him out? We'll see what happens. But Caleb Plant, the biggest thing overall for you in that fight when it comes down to it is that are you at times going to be willing to stand your ground with Mr. David Benavidez? Because even if you try to outbox him, and there is going to be certain rounds, in my opinion, that Caleb Plant wins, if you're not willing to stand your ground and sometimes exchange with David Benavidez, or I wouldn't say overall completely exchange with him, go toe-to-toe with him all the time, but there is going to be certain moments to where you find yourself in trouble in that fight. And we're going to see truly how Caleb Plant is going to handle that test, because he failed the test against Canelo Alvarez. I can maybe give him a little bit of a pass in that fight because Canelo's boxing IQ and his boxing ability is otherworldly. It is great. Overall, he is an all-time great fighter, no doubt about it. David Benavidez has a lot of flaws. So this is going to be a fight that a lot of people take a look at it as 50-50. So Caleb, what we're really going to figure out about you when it comes down to it is not only how truly skilled you actually are against a fighter like that of David Benavidez, but also where you are at this point in time in your career and how much courage are you truly going to show. And of course, I think any professional boxer shows a great amount of courage in the first place. But one thing that I did not like about Caleb Plant in that Canelo Alvarez fight, and it could have just been that Canelo's defense was phenomenal, which it usually is when it comes down to it. And of course, his power is also very, very good, especially for his size. It could have been that. Maybe it'll be different against David Benavidez. But Caleb Plant, in my opinion, he needs to be willing to stand his ground a little bit more in the David Benavidez fight than what he did in the Canelo Alvarez fight. There's going to be times where David Benavidez has him up against the ropes. There's going to be times where he hits him with multiple exchanges or overall has him in trouble. And Caleb Plant is going to have to stand his ground, build up the courage and say, no, David Benavidez, you're not going to bully me like that. You're not going to bully me and overall pressure me throughout the whole entire fight. I'm going to stand my ground and I'm going to hit you with certain counters. I'm going to try and hurt you. I'm going to show you overall that I can hurt you with certain counters and that I can hit you overall at my best. And if Caleb Plant does not show that, overall, more than likely, he is going to lose this fight either by unanimous decision or by later round stoppage. So this fight is going to truly tell us a lot about both fighters.
Sure. Style-wise, if you could compare Benavidez to Canelo, who would you say is the more complete fighter?
I'd say that Canelo is a more complete fighter. He's a legendary fighter.
I don't think there's any doubt that Canelo Alvarez is the more complete fighter. Now, certain channels like that of a DontaesBoxingNation, when it comes down to it, he'll try to make you believe that David Benavidez is the better fighter and that some of these other guys are the better fighter because, once again, he knows that Canelo Alvarez is the main threat. But if you truly know your boxing, if you know anything about boxing, you know that Canelo Alvarez is a great all-around complete fighter. Now, I believe more than likely that Canelo Alvarez, that he's probably going to get into the ring with Dimitri Bivol, and that's going to be a very uphill battle in that rematch. So we're going to see how well Canelo Alvarez is after that fight. Because if he does lose that fight again, there's no telling overall where he's going to be in his career and where he's at mentally. But we'll see what happens. We'll see.
He's a future Hall of Famer. He's got a lot of experience under his belt. He's fought a lot of different styles. And, he's a great fighter.
Any thoughts, speaking of the two Mexican fighters, any thoughts on the Mexicans for Plant kind of phrase that's going around social media? And Have you seen it?
Yeah, there's been a lot of it. A lot of it, Raza for Plant, Mexicans for Plant. So definitely feeling a lot of the Latino love. Definitely appreciate all you guys, showing up, supporting, tuning in. And March 25th, we got a big one.
Do you feel like he lives up to the moniker, the Mexican Monster? Or, he does and you're just a bigger monster? He's not really a Mexican monster? What do you think about that name?
Well, I think that David Benavidez we're going to truly see on March 25th if he truly is the Mexican Monster. Now, if you're talking about overall in terms of a threat to a certain amount of other contenders, yeah, you could call him the Mexican Monster. Is he as much of a Mexican monster, I believe, as that of a Canelo Alvarez? No, not really. I don't think that he's really anywhere as skilled as Canelo Alvarez, or at least to the point overall to where he's as complete. I think that Canelo Alvarez has way better defense, I think that he even has better power, even overall for the size disadvantage that Canelo Alvarez would be at compared to David Benavidez. I think that he has a decent amount of better head movement, and I just think that he has higher boxing IQ. That's why if a fight were between Canelo and Benavidez were to happen, if Canelo Alvarez is at least at 85 to 90% of his best, he should be able to beat David Benavidez.
I mean, he can call himself whatever he wants. You know, that ain't got nothing to do with me. So, March 25th, we're going to find out.
What would you say is the best weapon, Benavidez' best weapon? Like, what is it that he does best that you have to watch out for?
You know, David does.
His best weapon, in my opinion, is his relentless pressure. When it comes down to it, once again, there are certain fighters to where they pretty much build their moniker or they pretty much build their reputation off that. And there are just certain fighters that are like that. Jarrett Hurd, Sebastian Fundora, Antonio Margarito. Now, David Benavidez, in my opinion, is more skilled than what some of those fighters are, but he also has a certain amount of flaws. He doesn't have the greatest of footwork. Sometimes it's a little bit clunky. Sometimes he's a little bit too square. Sometimes overall he shuffles his feet overall a little bit incorrectly. He also sometimes is a bit too stiff. Overall, when it comes down to he has a high guard constantly, which sometimes overall can create himself to get hit with certain counters. So David Benavidez, overall, he does have to be careful. But his biggest asset is that overall, a lot of the times, at least in the moment so far, he doesn't get scared. He overall shows a lot of heart. He's willing to overall put his heart out on his sleeve in the fight. And he's willing to go balls to the wall to win the fight, at least so far in a fight when it comes down to it. Will Caleb Plant be that guy to finally stop David Benavidez overall from doing that? We'll see what happens.
A lot of things good. He's a good fighter. I've never felt like he was anything other than a good fighter. That's where I'm at in my career is I want to face good fighters. I'm not here to face bums. I'm not here to face scrubs. And, you know, I'm continuously putting myself in these positions of, you know, being the underdog, and I don't mind that. And so, you know, March 25th, styles make fights. And so we'll get to find out, you know, for sure on March 25th.
You know, a lot of your knockdowns and knockouts, they come on the left hand, the left hook. Do you feel like Redman has the right hand developing better, more of a, you know, two-handed fighter with the punching power? Or
I mean, in some of my TV fights, you guys have seen, you know, the left hand. But a lot of my early fights, you know, it's the right hand that's, you know, getting the job done. And one hand sets up the other. So, you know, I feel like I'm a complete fighter. I'm a two-handed fighter. I got a two-fisted attack, and, you know, I'm able to do a lot of things in the ring. So.
All right, now check this out, guys.
But anyways, that's really about it for today. I just thought that I would talk about that very particularly interesting interview that Caleb Plant had. That is going to be a very particularly interesting fight that's going to happen on March 25th. Another clashing of the styles. Almost another Tim Tszyu versus Tony Harrison type of matchup, which of course that fight's going to happen this weekend. But let's see what happens with that. Very, very particularly interesting matchup. But I'm not really going to reveal who I 100% believe is going to win or my full analyzation right now, even though some of you may believe already who you think I'm going to believe is going to win the fight. But I'm going to wait for that overall, probably about a week, maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks before the fight. But we'll see what happens. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.